Hello weaving friends, see this stack right here? This is a stack of some of my most favorite items that I have ever woven, and I'm going to share them with you today. Well, I have to admit it was pretty hard to narrow down to a list of 5, but if I didn't, then we could be here all day because I literally have weaving coming out of my ears. I have weaving in my house, in my studio, on myself, everywhere. It is everywhere. But I did choose 5 that I think are my most favorite, at least for now, because usually what happens is when I start a new project, that's my new favorite. I'm sure that happens to you too. So I'm going to take you through the items one by one, and I'm going to talk about what the project is, the yarns that I used, the loom, etc., etc. Well, I couldn't have a favorites list without putting my first ever woven item on it. This is my first piece that came off my rigid heddle loom, which was my very first loom. This one is a scarf. It's relatively short. Let's just fold it out. So this is kind of a scrappy scarf, I guess you could call it. I've got all different types of yarns in here. So what I did for this scarf is I put on a warp of this lighter purple. Would you call that a lilac? I'd probably call that a lilac. It's an Australian 8-ply, which is around a DK weight of wool, and it's a superwash wool. So I put that on as the warp, and I used my 7.5 dent heddle because that was the only heddle that I had at the time, having just bought my Ashford rigid heddle loom. And it's a 24-inch loom, but I would have been able to fit this scarf on a 16-inch as well. So I put the warp on at that set, and then my idea was, because I had been knitting quite a lot and also dyed yarn a lot in my past, I even had a yarn dyeing business at one point, and I also had some hand spun. I thought it was a great opportunity to get to know my loom just through using all of these different yarns and seeing what they did together, how they looked together, and then seeing what I came out with. Maybe at the end it would be a wearable functional item, or maybe it would be something I'd want to hide away in the cupboard, who knows. I actually love the scarf, the way that it turned out. And I have to say, I've never really woven another thing just like this. Everything else that I've woven since, I guess, has been a lot more planned. So I'm super glad that I took the time to do this because it helped me to know what colors I liked, how those colors looked side by side, what different weights of yarn would look like as weft yarns, how that would affect the edges. Of course, it gave me the opportunity to practice my edges. Now just take a look, take a moment to have a look at those edges and see how wonky and imperfect they are. So this is proof that we all start in the same place and we can all get to the same place through practice. So anyway, I had some fairly fine hand spun yarn in here. I had like right down to a lace weight yarn, fingering weight, DK weight, iron weight. And I tried them all in this scarf, and that's what I came out with. And I had hand dyed, I had variegated, I had solids. One thing about these yarns is they were all wool because I wanted to make sure that I wouldn't have any weird surprises afterwards. But this was such a great exercise in so many ways, and I ended up with a really very attractive scarf. Now these days I would make my scarves quite a bit longer than this, but you could almost think of this as like a sampler for me initially. Okay, my second favorite, and by the way, I haven't put these in any order of preference or anything, they're just as I stacked them. So my second favorite, this must be my most worn woven item, I reckon. This is my garden path scarf. I dyed this yarn myself, so I got this custom color that I absolutely love. And I used, for this one, I actually used a 3-ply. It's an Australian 3-ply, which is, it's kind of in between a lace weight and a fingering weight yarn. So if you are, say, in the US and you think of a 3-ply, it's probably going to be something totally different to what we here in Australia would call a 3-ply. So it's actually quite a fine yarn. This was a wool, and as I said, I hand dyed it. And this scarf can be seen around my neck every winter for most of the winter. It has been a bit battered up. Admittedly, it actually ended up going through a wash cycle that it wasn't supposed to go through. Somehow it worked its way in there. And so it's not quite as fine and beautiful as it used to be. It's a little bit pilled, and it's a little bit contracted because it went through a hot wash. It wasn't supposed to. But I still wear this every winter. What I love about it is it's really, really warm. But it's really light. You can see how light it is. Now I do have a heavier version of the Garden Path scarf. Now, by the way, I will have any patterns or any resources that I'm talking about today, I will have them linked down below as always. This one is also the same pattern, but let's have a look at the width comparison. So I made this one wider and longer, like quite a bit wider and quite a bit longer. So just to give you a rough comparison, that's the width of the first one and that's the width of the second one. The second one I wove in a fingering weight wool, and it's not hand dyed, it's commercially dyed. And I also made it super long. It's really long. I can't tell you how long it is. My idea was to not make a blanket scarf, but to have it really, really long. So let's see, if I wrap it around like that. Okay, well, it doesn't look that long when I do it that way, but it's much longer than the first version that I did. And a lot of people ask me, how do I adjust the pattern to make it a little bit larger? And I always say, just add on in groups of 4, because the bunches that you're working in the actual pattern, they go in groups of 4. So just add on groups of 4 to whatever width you want. Add on extra warp if you want the extra length as well. Bear in mind that with this sort of pattern, because it's a lace kind of pattern, it's really stretchy. It will contract in quite a lot. Same goes for the length. It'll contract lengthwise as well, like much more so than a plain weave or something else would. So just keep that in mind if you're adjusting the pattern, but it's not hard to do, and see what a lovely piece you can get. Now, if you had a wider loom, these are both done on a rigid heddle loom. Did I mention that? I didn't. If you have a wider loom, you could do a shawl in this. That would be beautiful. My rigid heddle loom is 24 inches. It's not quite wide enough because of that contraction. Let's go on to item number 3. I really love this one, but it's a little bit funny showing you because it's a kitchen towel and it's very old. I'm not really sure how many years it is since I wove this. Quite a lot of years, and it's been used in my kitchen frequently, like constantly, ever since. It gets used in the kitchen, it goes through the wash, it goes on the line, it comes back to the kitchen. It is my favorite. I don't know why. I have woven other towels in this pattern with this yarn, and they're just not quite the same. This one just turned out really beautifully. This has just been washed, so it's a little bit stiff. I wove this on, I think I wove it on my David floor loom, and it's a 4-shaft pattern, M&W threading. And if I hold this up, can you see the holes and the bits that are wearing through? Like literally, this towel is so old. And that's another thing I love about it. Actually, it has outlived some of my other towels that have been woven more recently. So, I don't know, there's just something a bit special about this one. So I used a white warp and a grey weft. It's a little bit hard to see that now because even the grey has faded over time. And I just really like the size and everything. The hems are a little bit wonky, but I don't care. And I'm just really going to be sad when this towel gives up and finishes. I think it'll probably end up a rag, and at least then I'll get to see it sometimes. Okay, this next one is as much about the final result as it is about the memories. You know, so many things that you weave, they'll remind you of things that you were doing at the time. Let's say my first scarf here, I have such positive connections with this scarf because it was the first thing I wove on my rigid heddle loom, and it was so exciting, and I couldn't believe that I was weaving and that it was looking okay, and just the potential. I knew that I had so much to explore and such an exciting journey ahead. The journey has been even so much more exciting than I could have contemplated at that time. But I was just full of the anticipation. It was such a fun time. So, and likewise, I have a really beautiful scarf that is a silk scarf that I wove with very, very fine silk. It didn't make it to the list. It's not that I don't love the scarf. It's that I wove that scarf at a time where our son was very, very gravely ill in hospital. A lot of you who have followed here for a long time will remember that time period and just how incredibly awful it was. And there were times that I couldn't go in to visit him because I was sick myself at the time with a flu. And so I was kind of stuck at home feeling so helpless, and he was in the ICU. And I was weaving that silk scarf at that time, among some other things, as like a coping mechanism because it was just such a heartbreaking time. So although the scarf turned out beautiful, I will always have these associations of it with that time. Thankfully, that same son made a full recovery. He is now married with a baby, thank God. But having said all of that, I want to show you my next item, which I have only positive associations with for more than one reason. So this is a scarf woven with Bambu 7. You may not be familiar with it. It is a beautiful fibre if you can get your hands on it. It is available here in Australia, and it's also available in the US from Silk City Fibres, and it's just a gorgeous yarn. The weight of it, it's a little hard for me to say because it's kind of in between weights. It's like in between maybe a lace weight and a fingering weight. But it's kind of hard to judge because it's bamboo. It's a very different kind of yarn. There are a lot of strands that make up one length of yarn. So it's different to, you know, looking at wool or looking at cotton. Anyhow, this scarf was the first scarf I wove, I believe, on my table loom when I first got a table loom, which was also many years ago now. I had the 80 centimetre Ashford 8 shaft table loom. The one you see beside me now, that's the 16 inch, whereas the 80 centimetre was like 32 inch, I believe. It's a long story, but I sold that loom that I had to fund the purchase of my first floor loom many years ago. And then a little while ago, I bought this 16 inch Ashford 8 shaft table loom. That is such a mouthful. But I bought it as a teaching loom so that I could do classes and everything with the table loom, and also as a really handy sampling loom for myself. I've got a sample on it right now. Back to the original point, which was this scarf was woven on my new table loom back then. So the world of table looms was very new to me. And so I've got a similar feeling about it as I had about this first scarf with my rigid heddle loom. It was just all so exciting. There's another reason why this is an exciting project for me, but I'll tell you that in a minute. So this was a 4 shaft undulating twill. I believe it was set at 20 ends per inch, and I used a teal, I think they called it the teal, which is a very blue colour. Have you ever noticed that teal is quite a subjective color. Sometimes it's incredibly green, sometimes it's incredibly blue, sometimes it's incredibly light, sometimes it's incredibly dark. So I, for one, am a little bit bewildered about what is a true teal. I say that teal is one of my favorite colors, but sometimes I see teal and I'm like, oh, I'm not really into that. That doesn't look like teal to me. I don't know, maybe someone can enlighten me. Is there a true teal? I don't know. And then for the weft, I did the purple Bambu 7. You know, patterns like these are so great because they're only 4 shafts. They look so impressive. And if you use a yarn that has a bit of luster, like the Bambu 7, you could use 8-2 bamboo, you could use tencel, you could use silk. You could even use wool. But, you know, I'm talking about the yarns that drape really beautifully, like this one, and that have that bit of luster. And then if you combine the right colors, you also get iridescence and you end up with something that's just so luxury looking. So the second reason why this is a special scarf to me is it's the first time also that I entered the Melbourne Show craft competition. They have a big competition every year for cookery, craft, all kinds of things, and you can enter in your items. Well, I won my category with this scarf, so that's a very special association that I have too, because I was a new table loom weaver and it's the first time really that I had put something out there and winning. I mean, what amazing feedback. And I also wear this scarf. I wear this scarf almost every week to church. They must go, oh, here she comes again wearing that scarf, because I just love it so much. Sometimes I'll put on a different one and I'll be like, I don't think it quite goes with what I'm wearing, or, you know, it's not quite the right weather for it today. I don't know. I just come back to this one. It's my default. So that's 4 items. Here comes the 5th. I've actually got 2 in this category. I know, cheating. But this is the main one that I wanted to show you. This is actually from my floor loom weaving class. This is future editing Kelly dropping in to say that this class is actually the overshot on a floor loom weaving class, not the introductory class. And this, I just love this. This makes my heart sing. It's a throw. It could also be worn as a shawl. Here we go. I'm going to lift it up. And it's overshot, obviously. You know I love overshot. And the back of it is different. I personally like the front more than I like the back. This is in my bedroom. I have a couch in my bedroom, and it's where I keep my prayer books and say my prayers in the morning, and this sits folded on the couch. And the couch is dark blue, so this goes really well with it. So what I did for this one is, it was also 20 ends per inch, still only 4 shafts, I know, amazing. And I did 8-2 cotton in the navy, so you can see that in the fringe, that was the warp. And then I used the 8-2 cotton as well for the tabby, so for the plain weave, the background fabric. And then for the pattern weft, you can see here, I used a fingering weight wool in this, I think it's called aquamarine, maybe. But it's a lighter blue color, but it's not a pale blue. I wouldn't call it a pale blue. It's a nice vivid blue. So for an overshot piece like this, you use 4 shafts and 6 treadles. You use 4 treadles for the pattern, for weaving the pattern. You use the extra 2 treadles for weaving alternate sheds of tabby or plain weave. Now, I think if someone was just starting out on a floor loom and they found that they could weave something as beautiful as this, wouldn't that be just an amazing encouragement? And it is, because the floor loom class is so popular, people really love it. So because we're talking overshot, and of course I absolutely love overshot, so I couldn't resist just popping just one extra in here to show you, even though I've technically used up my 5 favorites. This is another one that, I've got mixed feelings about. I love it, but I didn't enjoy weaving it. And I can tell you about that in a moment. So this is also an overshot pattern. It's a lot finer than this one. The pattern weft yarn is actually the same weight as the Throw project. It's a fingering weight wool. The warp and tabby, the warp is where I went wrong with this project. So I used a 28-2, so it's 28/2 wool. Beautiful, beautiful merino wool. So soft, so dreamy. Actually, this knitted shawl, I made this on my knitting machine. This knitted shawl is made from the very same yarn, and so it is perfect for machine knitting. So what happened with this throw? Okay, well, my edges are quite dodgy, not very good. I really loved it for this project because it's so soft, and I like seeing the overshot in a finer weight with a woolen warp, because almost always I use a cotton warp and tabby. So that was kind of my idea to experiment with the wool. However, this wool under tension on the floor loom, the breakages were out of this world. I spent the whole project trying to repair broken ends just so that I could get it finished, and I even had to cut it off early because it just became too much of a battle. Now you're probably thinking, well, didn't you do the snap test like you tell people to do? I did actually do the snap test. I had the idea that it could be a little bit like a chenille. A chenille will fail a snap test every time, but if you tension it really evenly, it'll be fine. There's no breakages at all. I thought maybe I could do that with this wool as well. Well, I couldn't, and I didn't. But I got this much fabric out of it. I haven't done anything with this because it's kind of a smallish piece. I know you're looking at it thinking it's not small. What I intended it to be was like another throw, like this size. So it ended up much smaller than I wanted. And so, yeah, I haven't been quite sure what to do with it. I guess I could make like a pillow cover or something like that out of it. It is beautiful. And when you look at it, it's funny, you can't see the heartache that went into this. You can't see all the breakages and everything. I repaired so many of them until I just couldn't do it anymore. You can see a bit in the edges that it's not ideal. But everything else, like the pattern turned out beautifully. It feels so soft, it's so light and squishy. It's beautiful and dreamy. My idea when I set out to weave this was to weave a luxury throw. And I got part of the way there, but I learned an important lesson. Well, I didn't sample with the fine yarn, with the merino, and I should have sampled with it. That's one lesson to learn. And the other lesson is just you can't always have your cake and eat it too. Sometimes a yarn is just not the right yarn. However, that beautiful merino, I can use it as a weft, and I can use it with my knitting machine, which is great. So I don't have to stop using it altogether. Well, friends, I hope you enjoyed this little peek into some of my favorite projects. Leave me a comment down below and tell me which one appeals to you the most. And I would also love to hear what is your favorite project that you have ever woven. If you liked this video today, I think you would really love this next video. It's all about how to choose yarns for your next weaving project, how you know what to choose, some of the terminology, which yarns work best for which projects, you know, all the ins and outs. It's actually a two-part video, so it's pretty comprehensive, and I hope you learn a lot from that one too. Well, friends, that's all from me today, and until next time, happy weaving.